Crazy is designed to help you answer specific questions and to make it very clear what the answers to those questions are and figure out what am I supposed to do with that information. So I kind of like to use this particular set of 5 questions as a roadmap for how to go through Crazy Egg. So first, imagine that I'm kind of looking at my website data for the first time and trying to understand what's happening and just trying to understand how do I improve my website right now so I can improve its performance. And the first question you need to ask is, who are your visitors? Which is that, where the visitors coming from, what's their traffic source, which pages are they visiting, all these different things like that. And so the main way to answer this through Crazy Egg's features is through web analytics. So let's jump into Crazy Egg right now. Now we have the home dashboard, which you first click into, and you'll see here that if you look here first and foremost, there's already a web analytics and heat map summary here. If we click into the web analytics feature here, it'll take you straight to this dashboard for the web analytics for your web traffic analytics site. Now, first off is you'll see, headline metrics for the date range, say today, unique visitors, page views, sessions, average session duration, bounce rate. But if you're looking at the date range for today, you'll also notice what we call the Astro map. And basically, this is a live real-time view of the people who are visiting your website right now. You'll see every astronaut or alien figure is going to represent a person, a visitor. You can see if you hover over them, you're going to get some information around their country, their device type, language, page, things like that. You can even see, if you look towards at the bottom of that summary, a recent event log of things that they've done recently that'll include scrolls, page views, visits, and even conversion events that you're tracking as well. And so you'll see here that, if they jump to another page, then you'll see them jump to another planet. If you also see a rocket go across the top, and this demo site has relatively low traffic, but if you have high traffic, you'll see a lot of this, which is if you see a rocket dropping off astronauts at the top, that's essentially a third-party site that's referring traffic to your domain. And so you can visualize that as well. But if I change this to any other date range, say last 30 days, but instead of a real-time astromap, I'm actually going to see uh, a time series chart of any of these metrics, say sessions or unique visitors, average session duration. And every time I rerun this kind of dashboard with the new date range, then it's going to have some AI analysis that's running right here, and it updates every time. So you'll see here, right, top insights is it's saying, okay, no visitors bounce much more. There's a big opportunity to improve engagement. Direct traffic dominates, but it's low quality compared to organic search and referral. This is real live example. I'm not just using dummy data here, but we've worked hard to make sure that our AI analysis can not only explain to you in understandable terms what's happening, but also explain, okay, which data should you be looking at and what improvements should you be making suggestively based off of that data. So I really recommend looking at those AI insights if you haven't already. But, like I mentioned earlier, is that we designed web analytics to do a lot of the same things as a GA4, often what Adobe Analytics is, which is what some of you use, but to be much easier to read, and it's free for everyone. So, you might be able to set up a lot of custom reports on those other platforms, but it's not going to be, those other platforms aren't going to be helpful right out of the box, whereas this can. And so I can scroll further down and see, okay, new versus returning visitors, pages, entry pages, countries, channels, etc., even UTM parameters. And if I click into any of these arrows, I'm actually going to be able to see a data table for that specific drill down. So I can scroll for all of these. I can search for pages. I can export this to a CSV if I want. One thing you might also notice here is that there's an instant heat map. And basically, what this does is, unlike the regular heat maps, which can collect a huge amount of data, which can collect 100% of page views, and which offer, scroll maps, AI analysis, things like that, this instant heat map is really just a small sample of the last 30 days. And the reason why that's helpful is because it's just happening automatically on every page you track. And so you can kind of look at this to take a quick gander at, okay, does this page have enough interesting click data on it that it's worth creating a heat map report on it and using my tracked page views allotment on this as well? As you'll see here, but I can jump straight into the instant heat map and boom, it's giving me something that's separate from the main heat map report. But at the very least, I can say, okay, there's enough traffic data, enough click data here, but it might be worth using a real heat map report here. And in fact, I can actually click into individual pages as well, and it will also overlay after a little bit of loading what those instant heat maps look like as well. So you can access that from your web analytics dashboard. Additionally, I can also, export all of these from the main dashboard. I can choose to share using a URL, this Web Analytics dashboard, to someone who doesn't have a Crazy Egg login. But lastly, one thing to note as well is, again, um, this is intended to be make GA4 even easier to look at. So not only can you add as many sites to look at Web Analytics here as well, but you can also connect multiple GA4 properties, Google Analytics properties, into this Web Analytics dashboard as well. And this is not going to count against your tracked page views allotment if you're on a paid plan, which means essentially you can take that same Google Analytics data and you might want to do custom reports in your GA4 account. But if you just want a very simple, easy to read, and well-designed dashboard to look at what your GA4 data is already saying, then you can go to Web Analytics. So that's number one. Now you know a little bit of data on on who your visitors are. The second question to ask is, what do they do on your site? And this is where, of course, kind of the bread and butter features of Crazy Egg are, right? Heat maps, recordings, and now AI analysis as well. So let's talk about heat maps first and foremost. I mentioned that instant heat maps are a very small sample of the last 3 days just to kind of get a high level view of, is this worth looking at deeper? But let's say I want to go in a lot deeper. That's what the main heat map reports are for. So let's talk a little bit about the setup, right? So number one is, I can, of course, set up heat maps for a single page. I can choose which devices I want to set up for, and by default, it'll create a different heat map for each device type. I can set it to either start immediately or schedule it in the future. I can also choose to have the heat map either collect just a certain amount of time worth of data or stop after a certain number of visits, which is helpful if, say, for example, you want to allot a certain amount of your tracked page views capacity to that. And I can, of course, set up custom ending settings as well. I can also notably enable recurring heat maps. And what this means is, say, if I want this to, set up a new heat map every 2 months, for example, I can have the heat map start tracking and then update with a new heat map every 2 months so that so that we can actually, make sure that we're tracking the new page, but with new page design as those page designs vary and change over time. I can also choose whether or not I want to omit pop-ups from the heat map. Some people do, some people don't. It depends on, how important that is to you. And in the advanced settings, I've noted that again, right, is nice thing about Crazy Egg is unlike, say, other vendors, you get the ability to choose which pages you want to track with heat maps on. And you also get to choose how much traffic you want to track on that heat map, which means not only can you choose to end the heat map for a certain number of days or end it after a certain number of visits, you can also choose to sample, which is to say, by default, number one, Crazy Egg automatically tracks 100% of page views, which is something the other vendors don't do. But if you do want to sample, but you want to choose how much data you want to sample, you can set this setting right here as well. And lastly, if you want to track multiple pages within one heat map, say, for example, you have a PDP or like some page template that you have a bunch of pages for, but you just want to kind of add them together and see the heat map for that, you can do that through multiple ways. You can add custom URL tracking rules. You can use a wildcard or a regular expression or by name, or up here, you can set up heat maps for multiple pages and then just specify the specific heat map URLs here. You also have options if you have things that are behind what we say is behind a login. So heat map pages behind a login, say things at a web app, or if I want to set up a heat map for a shopping cart. The way you do this is with a Chrome extension. And this is the Chrome extension right here. It's called Page Camera. But basically what it'll do is instead of just automatically going to your page, it'll take a screenshot of the existing page. But then on top of that, it'll continue to track a lot of the engagement data as normal and then overlay that on top of the current screenshot. And as a result, you can do that for a shopping cart or pages behind a login. So that's heat map setup. Now let's actually go into the actual results of a live heat map and understand how to use this. So if I go into this real life heat map, you'll see here that I have the regular, heat map that is visualizing click data. I can also visualize this to see scroll data. So the thing is, with most pages, you automatically see that the first people do is they decide whether or not to even look at your page, or they might leave. Most people don't even scroll below the fold, which is basically the part of the page that's below what automatically fits on the screen when it first arrive. And then afterwards, if they decide to save, then they decide whether or not to click. And so, you can view the scroll map here separately, but I like to kind of overlay it here by clicking the bottom right button. It's called show scroll map down here, and I can overlay it here as well to see not only where people are scrolling to, but also where they're clicking. But you notice in Crazy Egg that there's a few different ways to visualize data, right? There's a confetti view, which is visualizing individual clicks, which is really helpful because, again, we are able to track 100% of those page views. And you'll notice here that there's actually data filters available in Crazy Egg. So, for example, if I want to see just clicks for direct traffic, or I want to add in, like, say, traffic that's coming from Google or neilpatel.com, for example, you notice here that not only am I filtering the data for this confetti map, and it's those filters are going to apply to all of these different map types as well. But it'll actually color code those dots on the confetti map as well. So I can actually visualize within here what are people from organic search versus direct traffic clicking on. And you'll notice that also, if you click through these other filters, I can view this by country, I can view this by new versus returning, by device type, operating system, even UTM parameters. You even have the ability to pass in custom variables into Crazy Egg. There's a support doc on this, but basically within the code that implements Crazy Egg, you pass in a custom variable, say, oh, are they logged in or not logged in, or what is the subscription plan for them, something like that. So you can pass that into Crazy Egg and then custom apply those filters as well. And like I mentioned, is, for example, if I go to, say, this list format, right? So this list report, basically what it does is we actually go through all the HTML on your page. We actually identify every single element, say buttons, links, pictures, things like that. We can add up the number of clicks that each one is getting. So if you'd like to kind of not just visualize it, but actually get a ranking along with the number of clicks and the percentage of clicks, you can view that here as well. And if I want to see this in more detail, I can actually click the name of the element. It'll take me to the overlay view, and it'll allow me to actually not only view this, but also see how that breaks down by these different filters as well. So I can click all these different elements and then see how this broke down. And you'll notice that even when I go to the list view, if I apply these filters, say removing traffic from India, then the numbers for this will actually update as well. And so as a result, this is really helpful because now it means I can focus on any specific visitor segment and then use a heat map to analyze that as well. Speaking of visitor segments, so we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of people have important conversion events, that is high impact, high value actions that they want the visitors to take. And what if conversion events you've already set up in Crazy Egg, you can filter by those as well. So say, for example, I want to filter by people who submitted the Get a Demo form within the 30 days of a first visit. I can apply the filter just the same way to my Crazy key maps, and as a result, I'll be able to see what that data looks like for those as well. I can layer in as many of these as I want. Say I want to see people who, say, did not do the start now conversion event. I can apply that as well. I can apply heat maps. I can share heat maps to people via a link with people who don't have a Crazy Egg login. Although we don't charge people for adding Crazy Egg team members to their account, so feel free to go wild. This is more of a kind of keeping things clean kind of perspective. But let's talk about the AI stuff as well, right? So like with web analytics, we also have, what we've basically done is we found that if you just take the regular heat map and then you throw it into an AI, the AI is just basically going to summarize stuff, patterns in the data that you can already see in your heat maps. But if we found that, like, if you format the data in a really nitty-gritty way, let the AI read data that goes into the weeds, say, oh, this many clicks on this button happened from returning visitors. Facebook traffic scrolled this far down, things like that. It's a level of detail that a human being's probably not going to read, but an AI can actually go through all those little details and then process it as well. And as a result, we're able to have AI analysis that is able to track clicks, scrolls. It'll even look at your conversion data. And so you'll see here, right, this is a real live example. The AI is saying, okay, returning visitors drive a vast majority of goal completions and revenue. High frustration signals are happening on key homepage sections as well. And it's even able to kind of link to the specific elements as well. So I really recommend looking at the AI analysis for your heat maps, especially as they gather more data over time, because the AI analysis is going to update every time you view them. But speaking of AI, right, is we had a lot of, power users, people who want to use AI more. And they ask me, okay, Stephen, is there a way that I ask follow-up questions of my AI? Can I ask it to kind of tell me which conversions are happening the most or things like that? And the answer is yes. If you're on Pro and Enterprise plans, you can absolutely do that. So if you hover in the top right here, you see this dot 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 menu. It'll give me an option to say compare heat maps. Say, and effectively this just allows me to compare different heat maps side by side. Say I want to compare it with this one, so I can compare heat maps with different pages for heat maps for mobile versus device versus desktop rather. I can even compare, for example, later on, I can compare heat maps uh for pages, different variants within the same A/B test and get that side by side, which can be super helpful, right? So that's number one. But number two is if, for example, I want to export that data and then analyze it elsewhere, or even analyze it within, an AI tool. There's also this export option, right? Now I can export this visual heat maps in a PNG, an image file for the heat map, scroll map, confetti. I can also export that list format to a CSV, which means I can export it, analyze it in Excel or Google Sheets, just, run some formulas like I like to do. But if you're on Pro and Enterprise, you'll also see an option down here, which is to export a raw JSON file for use of AI. And basically, this is us giving you the power to directly download the AI compatible data that we use on our backend and then use it yourself. The reason why we did it this way is because, it was quick for us to build, but we also decided like, hey, if you want to decide which AI has access to your data, we give you the ability to download it for yourself, and you'll have access to that file after you download it, even after you stop using Crazy Egg. That also means you can use whatever model you want. Say you want to use cutting edge model like Claude right now. Maybe, some organizations they're only allowed to use Copilot or Gemini internally, so you can use that as well. But, I said, let's use a real life example. So if I go to Claude and I exported a heat map recently, earlier, this is a real JSON file that I exported about, I want to say like an hour ago, something like that. I'm going to export that and upload it into Claude. If I can ask Claude, okay, um, uh, analyze this heat map data for my homepage. Show me which elements get the most engagement, which conversions are the most successful, and give me an A/B testing roadmap. And boom. So I can go in here and I now it's going to analyze my real heat map data. And you'll notice here that I can just write whatever prompt I want and use it to analyze the data as well. Now, while it runs, I've been able to use this to say like, hey, help me understand this data, help me understand which conversions are most popular, which is why it's important to set up new conversion events, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But I've been able to go so far as to, hey, give me an A/B testing roadmap, or I've been able to, for example, export two different heat maps for two different page variants with an A/B test. And I said, hey, these are two different page variants with an A/B test. Contrast and show me and tell me the differences between the engagement data on these different pages so I understand what people are doing within this A/B test. So I'm not able to just get numbers, but the AI is actually able to explain in basic terms what's happening here. So suddenly with AI, Praising is essentially not just becoming a way where you can analyze the data within the software itself, but it's also transforming and formatting this data in a way that AI can actually work with. So, I'm giving you a bit of an example, and I haven't gone in this level of detail in previous webinars before, so you guys are like seeing this live. But now it's saying, okay, now I have everything I need to build a full dashboard. Let me render it. While it's working, let me show you an earlier example. So I ran this example with a heat map that I ran on CrazyEgg's real pricing page. I asked what patterns do you see in visitor engagement? What do they convert? Where's the friction? What optimizations should I make to the page design? So Claude was able to give me some high-level metrics. It showed me a chart of where visitors are dropping off, the top clicks elements. It gave me a map of the engagement and the friction, and it even gave me a list of optimization recommendations, right? Gave me a little bit of a summary, and I asked it, give me an A/B testing roadmap based off of this, and gave me a list of these A/B testing ideas in different waves. So it's saying do these in weeks 1 to 6. It said do these in weeks 6 to 11. It's giving me metrics to kind of explain why it's important. And then, maybe I can ask it like, hey, can you categorize this by copywriting, page design, etc.? I let it go off to the races. Let's see if this one's finished running. It's still going. But okay, no, so there it is. So now it's actually going through top collect elements, and you'll notice that the prompt is a little bit different, the page data is a little bit different, so it's giving me something a bit different. But it's still going like, okay, 60%, 4% of visitors never scroll past the fold. The hero section is doing the heavy lifting and apparently failing it, so it's already giving me recommendations here. So if you're on a pro and enterprise plan, I really recommend exporting your heat maps to AI and doing some analysis there. If you're on plus, unfortunately, or starter, unfortunately, you don't have access. But we're doing some work right now. So if you want access to this without having to upgrade, email support@crazyegg.com because we can add this to your plan just for a little bit of a discount. But yeah, effectively, this is how we're already using AI at Crazy Egg, and we're going to show a little bit more later. But that's heat maps. The other way to answer the question of what visitors are doing on your page is recordings. Now, whereas heat maps are very aggregated, and it's kind of a way of seeing like, oh, in aggregate, what are people doing on the page at, in volume? Recordings are a lot more like a microscope. It helps really well if you're trying to examine in detail what individual visitors are doing and to explain, okay, what are they running into? What does it look like from their perspective? Things like that. So now the default view is by what we call playlists, basically groupings. But let's go to the list view, which is basically what you're going to be able to see for this, right? With recording, you can see, okay, what's the date that this recorded? What's the start page? And you can see some tags related to, did they encounter an error? Did they do any dead clicks, any rage clicks? You can even see information related to the conversions, right? Did they add anything to cart, things like that, plus some information on the desktop, the device type, the browser, the country, etc. And if I click into now, one thing to notice here as well is, most people have, access to hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of recordings. Realistically, you're not going to watch all of those. Even I don't do it, right? So one way we decided to apply AI as well is to figure out, okay, which recordings can actually tell you something, and can I preview what this recording is going to show me so I understand what I have to learn from this. So number one is, every time that I show a certain number of list of recordings, we're going to have the AI evaluate and read through and watch all of those recordings and basically give you a very quick summary of some of the most interesting session recordings that you could look at and tell you why it's important to look at. So it's saying, okay, this highest value session has 4 goal conversions, but it also includes 2 errors. Okay, so this visitor, is doing some stuff on the site, but they're having a pretty frustrating experience. So that's why you might learn something from them. If I, for example, want to focus specifically on frustrated visitors, I can apply, any of these filters, like I mentioned with the heat maps. I can add additional tags, add these additional filters, things like that as well. And then as soon as I apply that new set of filters, the recordings you should watch, AI is going to rerun them and then highlight a new list of recordings you should watch. This will even work if, for example, I want to focus on, say, a different date range as well, which means you can constantly just focus on some fresh visitors and get some analysis there. Now, if I click into even this very long session, around 23 minutes, and I look at the recordings player, you'll see here that not only can I get the recordings player, but it'll show me the visitor recording here. It'll give me a bit of high-level information related to the visitors, say their device type, their country, and things like that. It'll give me an events log, basically saying, okay, jump me forward to specific interactions we did on the page. And you also notice that there's an AI analysis button here, right? So I can basically have the AI really quickly summarize this whole, no matter how long, recording for me, and it'll tell me what happened on this recording, that I can skim through in 30 seconds. And if it's relevant, it'll specifically tell me the timestamps related to that as well. So suddenly, even if I'm looking at these timestamps, I'm able to not only condense watching this entire 22-minute recording into 30 seconds of reading, and I can jump specifically to the specific timestamps that are relevant if I want to see the issues I'm seeing. This is really helpful because if there's UX issues that I want to diagnose, I can see that. If I want to see errors to show to my web developer, I can show them jump straight towards the error that they're encountering, so you can replicate and fix those errors really quickly. And lastly, of course, you can also export this recording data as a JSON file into your AI analysis tool as well, which means you can analyze your recordings in the AI as well. So again, schemas are good for kind of like aggregating a lot of different visitors on a whole page and getting the patterns out of that. Whereas recordings are very helpful for if you want to analyze specific visitors and look in a lot of detail to understand what their experience looks like. So that's how you use heat maps, recordings, and AI to understand what people are doing on your site. Now, the third question you might ask as well is not just what are we doing, but also what are we looking to achieve? And there's two different ways of doing that. There's conversions, which is looking at a lot of quantitative, a lot of accurate data, and surveys, which is hearing straight from those visitors for what they want. So let's talk specifically about conversions. So conversions, like I mentioned earlier, are high value events that are important to your business. It might be people doing an important campaign page, submitting a demo form, maybe people adding something to cart, or even checking out. And the reason why it's important is because Crazy can track a lot of events that are happening on a page, like clicks, scrolls, things like that. But these really high value events, um, we can detect a little bit of this data, but we don't automatically track it unless basically unless you tell us that it's worth tracking. And from then we'll do that. Now, we made this as easy as possible to set up. So if you've already just had Crazy Egg installed on your site, then we can track, say, oh, I want to track people who visit the QuickSprout homepage. Once I type in the URL, then it'll preview the page in there, and I can simply say, okay, I want to track clicks on this particular page element. And then, without adding any additional code, I can track clicks on that page element, say a button or a link or an image, as a important conversion event. Say instead, I want to track people reaching a certain page. This can be something bottom of the funnel, like say a thank you page, a confirmation page, but it might be, say, I want to track people who successfully get to a PDP page or people who successfully get to a cart or checkout page, for example. I can track that as well. I can even track, say, people who fill out a certain form. It's really helpful if, say, have a demo request or a lead form. I can, if there's a form on the page, we can automatically just track submissions to that form. But if you have more advanced ways of tracking this, say, for example, if you're sending data to Google Tag Manager, what I could actually do is go to the custom HTML tag option. This will give you a custom event tag. And so I can map that tag to any triggers that have Google Tag Manager and basically just fire that custom event code straight to Crazy Egg. And so as a result, you can just have Google Tag Manager send that same conversion tracking code and track it that way. Or, for example, say you're using an ad conversion pixel, Google, TikTok, or Meta. You're sending conversion data to one of these ad platforms. So you're sending conversion data to GA4, or even tracking an e-commerce event in Shopify or in Squarespace, things like that. If you're sending conversion data to e-commerce platforms to add tracking pixels, even to GA4, we can simply track that conversion data that's being sent to those platforms and just have Crazy Egg track it for A/B testing, for reporting, things like that as well. Which means that instead of having to add additional code and having to talk to a developer for this, we can simply catch conversion data that's already being sent to these other platforms and then start reporting about it as well. And so as a result, we're automatically going to start adding reporting for these conversion events. Like say, oh, I want to see this number of people who are submitting the get out demo form by day. You can see the number of unique visitors who are doing the conversion event, see conversion value here. Now you can add multiple triggers within a conversion event. That's something to do, I think, a little bit later. If you're not already using this, I suggest just having one trigger per conversion event so far. But it also gives you reporting for, say, which pages are getting those conversion events, as well as which A/B tests are using this conversion, which I'll show a little bit later. So that's a quantitative way of showing what people are trying to achieve on your page. And one thing to note as well is that you can actually get notifications for when a specific conversion event happens. Say I want to send a Slack message to a certain channel when this conversion event happens, or I want to get an email notification. I want to send an API endpoint, or even trigger a Zapier automation. You can do all of that from Crazy Egg for free. The other way to track what people are trying to do is with surveys. And a lot of you are probably familiar with surveys now because you actually literally submitted a survey to sign up for this webinar. But effectively, it's a survey is going to be, a kind of like on-page widget, but it enables you to collect feedback and information from your visitors without sending them away from your website. So I can, for example, browse a lot of these templates, say optimize pricing, preference tests, give me feedback, give me an NPS response rating, things like that. But I can also, even if I click into one of these, I can also go in and create one of these from scratch. Say I can, design like multiple choice options, text options, collect an email, give a star rating. And you'll notice here as well that you get a preview of what this looks like as well. Not only can I add additional multiple questions, and there's no limit of a number of surveys that can happen in Crazy Egg, but there's a limited number of responses, no limit on the number of questions. And I can even add custom conditional branching. So for example, I want to say, okay, if the rating is exactly 1 star, then go to the last question or go to the next question or even open up a new URL or send emails. So I can use surveys not only to collect feedback or research data. I can even use this to say route people to support or route people to sales or send them to the right page or the right document if it's going to help them solve a particular problem. So surveys are, started out being a tool for getting feedback, but you can actually use this as a lead routing, as a sales, or even a support ticketing tool as well. And it's 100% free for everyone to use. Now, if I want to see, what this is going to look like, then I can actually go into, let's go into this results page. And Crazy Egg automatically is not only going to give you the ability to see all those individual responses. If it's relevant, you can actually see the recording specific to that particular visitor. And it'll link right here. Helpful if, say, they're reporting a particular bug. I can export the CSV for this particular survey to get a Excel sheet of those responses. I can set up notifications for every time someone gets a response, submits a response rather. But also, Crazy Egg will not only be able to show you the data for those individual responses, you can also, for each of those questions, get some data analysis. We can generate some sentiment analysis, give you a chart of all the different kind of data to analyze, and we'll have AI automatically summarize what things we're seeing in this survey data as well, which means that kind of you can see in a very quick glance, okay, what's the survey data telling me so that I can present those results later. So surveys is already included for everyone. Really recommend you use that as well. Now, let's talk about what friction is getting in their way, right? So, funnels, for example, so conversions, right? Say you're trying to improve the number of people who add something to cart or add some or even check out, or maybe the number of people who successfully submit a lead form. A lot of the time there's friction getting in the way. Maybe they can't find the right link. It takes too many steps to get to a certain step, things like that. We've built the surveys tool to analyze your conversion data to understand how many people are getting through each step of a conversion funnel and how many people are dropping off. So you see here, this is a real example of a conversion funnel where you can see, okay, a certain number of people within this time period entered the site. How many people got to the get a demo conversion event, and then how many people successfully signed up, Rev. And you'll see here, right, 1,293 people successfully visited the site, but of those people, 432 got to the get a demo conversion event, which is say 2/3 dropped off, and only a third made it to that step. And then of those people, 421 people dropped off, almost 98%, and just 11 people, 0.9% of those visitors made it to that step. And that conversion value was worth $200. You can see how this any of these conversion events is trending over time. Even get a summary of those conversion metrics as well. So this is why I say that it's important a lot of the time to not just set up conversion events and track them for, say, your bottom funnel conversion events for A/B testing. Set up your top and your middle funnel conversion events, like say people visiting an important page, like a PDP, or people, like adding something to cart, because you're going to be able to see how many of these people got to each of those steps. And the nice part is that, you don't have to set up those conversion funnels ahead of time and then watch the data track in. As long as you have conversion data historically to track this, I can actually change the order or add new, say, click homepage button or link, add new, conversion events and play around with this as a sandbox tool to see how many people are actually getting in through each of these. It's a sandbox tool that's going to be able to analyze any of your data, and you can just mix and match and play around with this funnel tool, so you can explore how many people are getting through this different parts of the user journey. And so again, I really recommend you set up your conversion tracking ahead of time so that you can get more data in the future to really analyze that. And it's also important to note that this conversion data is also included in your conversions filters in your heat maps, and it's included in your recordings filters, and it's also included in the AI exports for your heat maps and recordings as well. So if you're not tracking conversions, you're not going to be able to analyze it in your AI tool. So recommend setting that up sooner rather than later. The other feature, which is really helpful for analyzing what friction is getting visitors' way, is errors. So we have a kind of a built-in error console log, where basically we're able to see, okay, say the last not just 30 days, 7 days, but 30 days. We'll analyze a lot of the errors we're tracking on your site. We can get some metrics on how many times it's happening, which pages it's happening on, number of visitors affected. I can go in and get some more detail, some more metadata on what's happening with this error report, so I can send it to my web developer if I'm trying to fix it. And on top of it, I can actually see the list of recordings that are relevant to this particular error. So I can see, okay, this error happened for this visitor at this time on this URL, and get more information here. And I can click straight to the recording specific to that error log as well, which means I can actually show not just the error console log and the metadata, but I can even send this recording straight to my developer for them to replicate the data rather, and figure out how to replicate it and then fix it. I can even use AI analysis to kind of explain how they're running into that as well. So again, errors is being used with recordings, which is helping you to replicate this issue. And on top of it, able to use AI as well to help understand what's getting people to drive into this error. So that's how you figure out what frictions are getting their way. Okay, so you have a lot of context information to understand, okay, who are your visitors? What are they doing on your site? What are they looking to achieve? What friction is getting in the way? How can you help people get to the objective that they're trying to achieve on your site? And how can you remove friction that's getting in the way? This is when we get into the really powerful stuff, which is conversion rate optimization tools. And this is going to be things like A/B testing, CTAs, and now audience targeting, which is now available in Crazy Egg as well. So let's show, I'm actually going to show CTAs first because, while A/B testing can kind of like be the very big way of like changing your page design in order to see, what is a way to get more people to engage, get more people to convert. But CTAs, I think of as a very lightweight way to kind of promote a new campaign or promote a new message or kind of test a new offer. And it's you can pop this up as a banner, as a pop-up, or anything like that. You'll see, kind of a template of options here. It pops up very similarly to a survey as well. And what this means is a very quick and dirty way to kind of test a new offer directly on your site without having to launch an A/B test. Say I can pop this offer. Say I want to promote a new webinar. Sign up for a new webinar next week. And then there's a button, a CT here to register now. I can have this open up a URL in a new tab, a new window, or just in the same window, for example. This will be a banner that pops up on top of my page. So say I want to, see this pop up, you'll be able to preview it there really quick. And of course, lastly, is you can choose a conversion event to prioritize for tracking here as well. And with CTAs, I forgot to mention this with surveys, but you can do this with CTAs as well, is I can choose which device types to show my survey or my CTA on. I can choose which domain to show it on. I can show which pages to deploy it on, not just individual pages, but I can even use wildcards for this. Say, for example, wildcards will be, okay, put this on every page that's, yoursite.com/products/something. And that'll mean that it'll show every page up on every page, but starting off with this. Show it to everyone, or say just visitors came to my site directly, or visitors came from a link from a specific third-party domain. I can customize the look of this CTA banner. I can choose where on the page it appears, and I can choose, say, for example, if visitors close the bar, do I want them to have an option? And if they close it, do I want them to show it to see it again? Yes or no? Or do I want them to see it after a certain delay? Things like that. And lastly, I can decide, should I show it as soon as the page loads? Should I show it 30 seconds after the page loads? Or when a visitor scroll past the fold? Or even when a visitor is about to leave a page? And that's what we call exit intent, which basically, if we see someone scroll to close that tab, for example, we'll pop up the CTA of a survey to try to catch them with some new messaging before they leave forever. Um, you might be familiar with this because a lot of you, the vast majority of you on this webinar, in fact, actually signed up for this webinar by a survey. And I actually set up that survey to pop up 30 seconds after your page loads to make sure that I'm catching people who are engaged with Crazy Egg and might actually be interested in loading more, as opposed to people who are just taking a quick look and might get annoyed. So, you might use this to say promote not just a webinar, you might promote a new campaign. Maybe you have a new product that you want to see people interested in this. And with CTAs, not only be able to see, number of views or number of clicks, but if this was live, you'd be able to see the number of conversions as well. So you can kind of get out of that like a click rate, right? And what I like to do is I like to kind of test a lot of different CTAs and then compare the click rate for each of them to kind of decide, okay, which of these offers are converting better, but I should test with an A/B test actually putting onto my page. And with that, let's look at A/B testing. So A/B testing is I recommend this as a tool to use if you already have hypotheses, that is ideas for things that might improve engagement or conversions on your pages, but you need to get some real clean experimental data to see, what this actually looks like, and to see does it actually perform better. And to make sure, of course, that, it's not just, oh, we did something this week, it's the holidays, so that explains why it's performing poorly. You're just sending a certain number of people to different versions of a page, so you can get clean data to say, hey, we performed a clean, test and control experiment here. And so we can actually say that this result is probably not a result of just, seasonal trends or something like that. So let's go to create new A/B test. Now I can, set up a URL redirect. Say, for example, I want to get people who go to the homepage, but then I want to send some people to like the test version of a page or, /test B, for example. I really recommend doing this URL redirect if you're doing a very big page design, just because it means that it's going to be better off to kind of like code that whole new version of a page design on a new URL. But if you want to do a really quick test, changing, say, only a couple headlines or only a couple page designs, or even just like a little bit of HTML, but not HTML for the entire page, I recommend using a visual page editor option. And the page editor option is designed for people who aren't full-time developers who want to make really quick changes to the page without having to bother their web developer. And with this, I can say, just put in the name of the URL of the page that I want to test. And then, one thing to note as well is I can test this on individual pages. But if I want to say, for example, test this on a whole bunch of different pages that fit a certain format, I can use wildcards for this as well. But say I test this on the homepage, I can then choose to target my test, and you saw this on the URL redirect option as well. But previously, some of you might have seen that there was previously just a device type targeting option. If you're on a plus plan, then you still only have the device type targeting option. But if you're on Pro, you're going to be able to target your A/B test now based off of UTM parameters, which means you can say, for example, customize versions of page for specific campaigns, for people who saw specific ads, or even specifically people came in for specific emails, even, right? You're also, if you're on Pro or Enterprise, going to be able to target people based off conversion event, based off of device type, based off of country as well, which means that you can do localized tests based off of different regions, different countries as well. But lastly is if you're on Enterprise, then you're going to be able to access all of these different targeting options, which means effectively you're not only able to do this, all of these targeting options I just mentioned. You can target people by their landing page that they came in on or whether they've seen a specific page. I can even target if you send visitor identifier data into Crazy Egg as well. I can even target people based off of, their visitor domain or even individual email addresses or visitor IDs, for example. Effectively, this means that you can now use Crazy Egg for personalization as well. But say, for example, I'm on Pro, right? And I want to target people based off of, okay, I want people who did click the homepage button, but did not um, submit the start now button. And on top of that, I want to target specifically people who came in through Facebook, for example. You'll see here, but I can actually layer different filters for my A/B tests when I'm targeting segments, using did or did not and or filters as well. There's no limit on the number of filters you want to apply. There's only kind of like different limitations and different plans based off of the type of filter that's available. But say I want to apply this right here, and now we have a targeting audience here. Next, I can go to the page editor and then test what kind of page designs I want to use, right? So for example, I want to go here. This will take me to a version of a QuickSprout page. I can go click a specific element and change this to say, welcome to QuickSprout. I can change the formatting. I can change the text color, not just the color of a text, but I can even add a hyperlink or change the link to the text. I can see AI suggestions for new copy. I can change the colors, not just the text color, but the border color, the hover color, things like that. I can even hide the element. Or I can say if I've highlighted it, that I can move it around, for example. And for example, if you know a little bit of HTML, I can actually change the specific HTML or the CSS for one element. So I can do a ton with, say, custom formatting for this page design as well. And on top of that, so as a result, for example, a lot of you will ask me, can I not just change one element? Can I say change a header menu, right? Which would seem kind of difficult. What I actually do a lot of the time is I click on the header menu and I actually change the HTML for the header menu as well. And so as a result, I can change the items that are available in that header menu. I can remove items, add new items within the header menu as well. And so if I want to preview that, I would go to the interactive mode, enable that, and now I can actually play around with a page as though I'm hovering over it and make sure that those changes were reflected in the code. If I also want to preview, I can click preview changes, this icon right here, and you'll basically pop this up in a brand new page to preview it. But if you also want to test this not on desktop, I can preview how different variants will look on mobile, and it'll go to the mobile version here. I can test how it's going to look on different device type sizes as well. If you click this option down here that says variant 1, I can actually add new variants to test as many variants as I want. We do not limit the number of variants you want to test in Crazy Egg. Or maybe I want to, get rid of a variant that I don't really like or I messed it up. I can click the trash or garbage can icon, and then it'll get rid of that as well. Next, once I leave the editor, it'll give me the option to choose the primary conversion event that I want to track, but you're actually going to be able to track and look at the results for any conversion event you want. And I'll show that for you in 10 seconds. Lastly is I'll have the option to decide how I want to split traffic, where I want to let Crazy Egg automatically route it, or say, I don't want to do it 50-50. Maybe I want to do it 80-20 or 90-10. I can set that here. And lastly is I can give a test a name. I can review all of these options and then change that right now. And then lastly, I can choose, by default it's enabled, but I can choose whether or not I want to set up a heat map for each variant of a test. This will happen at no extra charge. This will not double count against your tracked page use limit. Though what that means is that now I can not only see the conversion performance for that A/B test, but I can analyze it and compare it and use AI to look at it within those heat maps as well. Now, let's save draft and close, and you'll be able to see the draft there. But let's look at what the results will look like once it's actually live, right? So number one is I can actually see not just the conversion data overall, I can see how it changes over time, look at different metrics, a conversion rate or conversion value. I can actually also toggle between different conversion events. And as long as I have conversion data tracked, historically for that conversion, for that A/B test driver, but I can track it. But it's only going to be we're only going to have data available if you already set up the conversion tracking for the duration of the A/B test, which again is why I suggest set up your conversion tracking sooner rather than later, even before you have an A/B test ready to run, because then you'll have data ready to review once you start launching the A/B test. Now, Now, with any A/B test, this is already one that's already finished, but you're actually going to have the option as well to change the settings of an A/B test while it's still running. You can not only end it, you can rename it, you can share the test results or a test preview with people who aren't Crazy Egg users via URL. You can change the default conversion event. You can add a new variant. You can change the split, traffic split. You're even going to have the ability, and it's not available in this one because it's already finished, but you can edit existing page variants, you can retire them, you can add new page variants as well. Which means, it's not necessarily a best practice, but you can, in fact, change the settings of an A/B test while it's still running. Um, and yeah, it's really that simple. Some of things to note as well is there's actually you can of course see the conversion performance of this A/B testing within this dashboard. You can see the behavioral data through the heat maps. But if you want to see metrics like say bounce rate or average session duration or metrics like that, Crazy A/B testing also has a GA4 Google Analytics integration for A/B testing specifically. And the way this works is we send a custom event dimension and basically a segmentation filter to Google Analytics every time that someone views an A/B test. So we'll tell them, okay, this is the name of the test. This is the ID of a test. This is the variant name, and the variant ID as well. And as a result, you can set up a custom report in Google Analytics to segment by these different page names or these different experiment names and get all those metrics you want to see within GA4 as well. And so as a result, you can use Crazy Egg not just to view and administer the A/B tests as well, but to also see um, send that data to GA4 for custom web traffic analysis as well. Okay, we're almost finished. And lastly, of course, I mentioned CTAs, I mentioned A/B testing. I Something to note here as well is that you can actually set, because of audience targeting, you can set multiple A/B tests to run on the same page. Say, for example, I want to say, for example, I want to first, okay, show A/B test one and send everyone that's where refer traffic from Google to A/B test one and send them to different A/B testing versions. And then after that, you can say, okay, people where the refer traffic is not from Google, but they are returning, send them to A/B test number two, and then you can send them to another version of a page. And then all other traffic to that particular page, send them to A/B test number three and test a different version there. This is a way that not only you can personalize different versions of a page experience to different visitor segments, but you can also decide which message works with which people at the right time. And as a result, it enables you to not only just kind of like find a one size fits all version of this page, you can actually help tailor and test which versions of which offers are going to work best with which visitor segments. So that's a best practice I recommend with audience targeting as well.